Hello, Tobes. Hello, everyone who's there. Good day, wherever you are in this big wide world. If we can all mute apart from Carolyn, that'd be fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys in assembled company, welcome to the World Storytelling Cafe. And today is Friday. Therefore, it is Stories for Children, and we have someone totally new to the cafe, not new to me. She used to appear at my my storytelling tent at Glastonbury Kidsfield,
and Guildfest,
and all sorts of places, not for a while. And so she's now. So it is with enormous pleasure that I introduce Carolyn Emmerson with various characters, Tippity Twig and Friends. So a round of applause for Carolyn. Fantastic. Carolyn, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, John. And I just want to say thank you to John for inviting me to tell. I haven't told for a while, so if there are any hiccups, then we'll just hiccup with them. Now, I wrote this story a long time ago when my children were small, and it is called Mirthful Merry and the Crumbling Wall. And we're going to put Tippity Twig down here just to listen to this one. So, Mirthful Merry, the storyteller, travelled from kingdom to kingdom, from village to village, from town to town, from city to city, from place to place, telling and telling all of the stories that she had heard from everything. Everywhere she went, the birds, bees, butterflies, and all the other creatures followed her, because even though she was a storyteller, she also listened to them and told their stories, so they watched over her day and night. One day, on her travels, she came to a place surrounded by a high wall, high up in the sky. Marching along the top, back and forth, were the guards in black uniforms. And on the wall was a sign. It read, "The kingdom of no storytellers, no storytelling allowed by order of the king." Mirthful Merryweather laughed out loud. Then she wiggled and jiggled her hips and danced a merry little dance as she sang a merry little song. All the birds twittered with excitement, and all the insects buzzed at once. "How ridiculous!" she cried. "How absurd!" she chuckled. "You cannot stop the birds from singing and the bees from buzzing," she called out in her loudest storytelling voice, until all of the guards, who were completely surrounded with birds and bees and other flying creatures, stopped their marching and stared angrily in her direction. Because the fact is that even though the idea of no storytelling was ridiculous to Mirthful Merry and her friends, it was not ridiculous inside the kingdom of no storytellers. Oh no, it was not. They do not dance, they do not sing, they hear not the birds, they smell not the spring. The people of the kingdom walk back and forth to their assigned places of work, neither looking to the right nor the left, except when crossing the road. Their lives were grey and dull, and the only words that passed their lips were, "Hello, how are you? Beautiful or horrible weather. Have a nice day." And the stories that they didn't tell sat waiting just behind the tips of their tongues. Only the children saw any real stories. Only they noticed the birds singing and the trees waving their limbs at them, showering golden light. But as soon as they could speak, they were taught to sit still and pay attention, not to walk on the grass, not to touch the earth for fear of getting dirty, and to do as they were told. So they quickly forgot the wonder of the world as seen, heard, smelt, and felt, touched for the first time. Mirthful Mary knew that something must be done, and filling her lungs with air, she began to sing out her stories, one after the other, this one being the first. As she cried out, once upon a time, thousands of tiny noses and millions of tiny ears began to twitch. And as she called, when rivers were wider and forests were deeper, the creatures living inside the wall for so long began to scurry to the entrances of their homes. Because even though the people, they hadn't heard the sound of such a voice in the dull droning of the people in the kingdom for so long. And as they started to come to the entrances of their homes, the wall started to quiver and quake and to shiver and shake. The guards on the top were alarmed. Everything started to rumble. Well, Mirthful Mary, just to help matters along, decided to sing one of her songs. My name is Mirthful Mary, and I've travelled far and wide, through town and city, village, green, and met man, woman, child. I live in forest, field and glen, by seashore and lakeside. I've listened to the wild things in the places that they hide. I've spoken with the butterflies who look me in the eyes. You might not believe me, but a child will be surprised. They see you when you see them as important just like you, not just a thing that flits about or floating in the blue. My name is Mirthful Mary, and I hug the trees each day. Connected with their wisdom, I feel them deeply play. That pray that in this time the people find the path back to the way, the path back to the way, the path back to the way. Well, the guards jumped down and began running into the gathering crowds, telling the story, which was not allowed, of the Mirthful Mary and the crumbling wall. And it was as if a mighty spell had been broken. All of the people, young and old, awoken from their living slumber, stopped whatever they were doing. The stories that were dying to be told, jumping onto the tips of their tongues, free at last and glad to be alive. Mirthful Mary clambered over the fallen wall and picked up Tippity Twig and Tippity Twiglet, the woodland elves, along the way. And then the laughter began, a ripple of joy that rose and fell like the waves of the sea, and tears flowed like rivers into deserts. On the waves of laughter and tears, old songs were remembered and new songs were born, and the storytelling spread far and wide, from city to city, from town to town, from village to village, from place to place. And finally, the wild cacophony reached the ears of the king, who, realizing that he was relieved of his duties, declared the rest of time a national holiday. He provided an enormous feast, which, as you know from John Rowe, if you'd have been there, you would have been invited and you would have had all that you could eat. And then because he'd had everyone talking to him since he was a small boy, he ran into the woods for some peace and quiet and to listen to the birds. He now lives most of his time high up in the branches of a huge, great, many times great grandmother yew tree in his garden with his beloved wife, who soon climbed up to join him. And they spend their time singing with the birds, who bring them lots of lovely treats to eat, as if they are chicks in a nest. After everyone had eaten all they could of the king's feast, They sat and listened to the songs and stories of the birds and the bees and the other creatures of the forest. And they listened to the wind whispering. They felt the pitter-patter of the rain. They felt the sun warming their skin. They saw the spiders' webs glistening. And as they saw, smelt, heard, and felt everything that they had forgotten, the eyes of the people got wider and wider and wider and wider. And the kingdom of no storytellers became the kingdom of storytellers. And so, as you can imagine, everybody lived happily ever after, because even when they had a sad story to tell, they had someone to share it with. And when they had happiness to tell, then they could tell everyone. And that is not really the end of the story, but it's the end of that part. And I must take a little drink, if you don't mind. Now, for my second story, I was going to tell you the story of Tippity Twig and the Pond Monster. And this story was inspired by two things. One was that I heard the story when I heard a version of the story called Little Possum and the Thing at the Bottom of the Pond, which is a North American story, which I don't know which tribe, but you can hear a really wonderful version of it at, what is it called, Fox. I will share it afterwards. It's a really great, like, little, but then I had also, my daughter, when she was a baby, snored so loudly that it led to, it led to me remembering a story from the woods, Acorn Woods, where I used to live. So we're going to tell this story. Once upon a time, long ago, well, not that long ago, really, Tippity Twig was fast asleep under the great grandmother oak tree in the acorn forest. He was deeply asleep and having a beautiful dream. And he was tucked right down into the roots of the great grandmother oak. And he was covered in a beautiful warm blanket of leaves when suddenly he heard a sound. It was a little sound at first, like this. Was it a growl or was it something else? But the noise, it got louder and louder and louder and louder. Well, you can probably guess what the noise was already, but Tippity Twig woke up with a start. Was that a monster that snorts and roars with great big teeth and horrible jaws? And even though he was scared, he stood up, shook off his blanket of leaves and set off. I am also brave, you see, as brave as you and as brave as me. So first he walked a little, like this. Can you do this? This is something that I am learning with conical rhythm. So it's very simple at first, and you can do it if you like or not. So taka, 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 taka. First he walked a little. Taka, 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 taka. Then he skipped a little. Takita, 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 takita. And then he ran. Takadimi, 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 ta. Until he came to the place where there was the pond in the middle of the forest. And right there, sitting on a lily pad in the bright moonlight, was Wide Mouth Frog. I don't know if you've ever heard of Wide Mouth Frog before, but Wide Mouth Frog liked to play tricks. And so when he saw Tippity Twig, he said, "Ribbit, ribbit, oh, Tippity Twig, it's you. Whatever are you doing in the forest all on your own, late at night, all by yourself? Aren't you scared?" Well, Tippity Twig was a little bit scared, but "I am also brave, you see, as brave as you and as brave as me. I'm looking for the monster that snorts and roars with great big teeth and horrible jaws." And he told the story of the pond monster just as I'm telling it to you. "Well," said Frog, "you've come to the right place, because this is exactly where the monster lives, at the bottom of the pond. And if you peep in and pull your fiercest face and make your loudest roar, you're sure to frighten the pond monster." Well, Tippity Twig looked in, he pulled his fiercest face, he roared his loudest roar, which I won't do because it might deafen you, so he just did a little roar, roar. And the monster pulled his own big fierce face and opened his mouth to do a great big fierce roar. But Tippity Twig, he didn't wait to hear the fierce roar. He ran, tackadimi, 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 ta, until he couldn't run any more. And then, right in front of him, landed silently Owl. An owl looked at Tippity Twig and said, "Oh, it's you. Whatever are you doing walking around in the forest all on your own, late at night, all by yourself, Tippity Twig? Aren't you scared?" Well, Tippity Twig was a little bit scared, but "I am also brave, you see, as brave as you and as brave as me. And I have found the monster at the bottom of the pond." Well, whenever I see the monster, Tippity Twig, what I do is I shake a big stick. That's what you should do, Tippity. That'll do the trick. So Tippity Twig, he walked a little, tack-a-tack. He skipped a little, tackita, 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 and then he ran, tackadimi, 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 until he came back to the pond. And he pulled his fiercest face and he put the stick high up above his head and he looked into the pond, and there was the monster holding an even bigger stick high above his head and pulling a fiercer face than ever back at Tippity Twig. Well, Tippity Twig shook the big stick and the monster shook his big stick back. Tippity Twig ran faster than his legs could carry him. Tackadimi, 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 da, until he couldn't run anymore. And there, up in the trees, disturbed by the commotion, were the crows. "Craw, craw, oh, it's you, Tippity Twig. Whatever are you doing in the forest all on your own, late at night, all by yourself? Aren't you scared?" Well, Tippity Twig was a little bit scared, but "I am also brave, you see, as brave as you and as brave as me, and I shall tell that monster off." Well, whenever we see a monster, said the crows, what we do is we throw a big rock. That's what you should do, Tippity. That'll make it stop. So Tippity Twig found the biggest rock he could carry and he walked a little, tacka, 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 tacka. And then he skipped a little, Takita, 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 takita. And then he ran. Takadimi, 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 takadimi da. And he came back to the pond and he looked in, and there was the monster. Well, Tippity Twig, he held the rock high above his head, and he looked in and saw that the monster was holding a rock high above his head as well. And so he threw his big rock into the pond, and the monster splashed him all over. Well, Tippity Twig ran faster than his legs could carry him, all the way back to the great-great-great-grandmother oak tree in the center of the woods. And he threw himself under the leaves and hid. Myrtle Merryweather started to climb down from her nest in the high branches, and she found Tippity Twig, and he told the story of the monster just as I've told it to you. Well, Myrtle Merry could see what had happened, and she said, as she carried him along back to the pond, the next time we get to the pond, when you look in, you must smile your biggest smile. Well, Tippity Twig, that's a very strange idea. And Tippity Twig wasn't sure about it at all, but they walked a little, and then they skipped a little, and then they ran a little, and they came to the place in the middle of the forest where the pond was. And Tippity Twig and Myrtle Merry practiced their biggest smiles. Can you practice your biggest smile, John Rowe? And all of the children practiced their biggest smiles. Yes, the biggest smiles of all. And they then looked into the pond. And to Tippity Twig's surprise, there were two monsters, and both of the monsters were smiling back. And so his smile got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he started to laugh because he realized what had happened. Do you know what it was? Well, there were two reflections now, weren't there? Tippity Twig had got confused, and he'd looked in the pond and seen his own reflection and thought it was a pond monster. But what about the monster that snorts and roars with great big teeth and horrible jaws? Well, that, I think, was you, Tippity Twig, with your nighttime snores. Do you think I'm right? Do you think it was Tippity Twig snoring? Right, so the thing is, we've got some stories about frogs. We've got a poem about me and my friends, the frogs. And we've also got a story about the wide-mouthed frog. And I'm finding it very, very strange to do a show without audience participation. And, you know, and I enjoy usually speaking with children. This is my first time doing a show live, John and Naomi and Louis and Timmy and everyone. So anyway, so it's my first time doing it, and it's a bit different, isn't it, to everything else. So we're going to do the poem first, I think, because I like jumping. Does everybody like jumping? I like jumping. So down at the edge of the acorn woods, where the forest ends, a brook from the river there is where Tippity meets his friends. Today, I've done this one, haven't I? I've got to do another one. I know which one I've got to do. I'm getting muddled up. I've got to do the one about the things that I like. Some say cluck, cluck, some say croak. There's quacking of duck and the rustle of oak.
Some say twitter, some craw from their throat, some chirrup, some whistle in feathered gold coats. And storytellers say crick, crick, the friends say crack, crick, crack, crick, crack, crick, crick, crack. So now we're ready for another story, the story of the wide-mouthed frog.
Well, you remember we had the wide. I'm just going to have to get some water. I haven't got enough. Sorry about this. Once upon a time, very, very long time ago, when your grandmother's 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 grandmother was a very little girl, there lived a very, very curious wide-mouthed frog. And he lived in the pond in the middle of a forest. Maybe it's the same one that Tippity Twig met who played a trick on him. But wide-mouthed frogs are known to like playing tricks. And on this occasion, it was the very first trick that the wide-mouthed frog ever played, and it saved his life. So wide-mouthed frog, as I said, was very, very curious, and he liked to ask questions about everything. Why, what, wherefore? Every day, all day, he would be asking questions, and the more questions that he asked, the more questions that he had. And so it went on, and one day he decided he wanted to know what everything else ate. He liked eating flies. So he went out on his journey, and first of all, as he was hopping and skipping and jumping his way through the woods, he met Butterfly. Well, he said, "Hello, Butterfly," said the wide-mouthed frog.
"I'm a wide-mouthed frog, and I eat little flies. What do you eat?"
And the butterfly knew that wide-mouthed frog also ate butterflies. So he stayed well out of the way of wide-mouthed frog's very wide mouth and said,
"I am a butterfly, and I eat nectar from the flowers and sap from the trees." "Oh, sounds yum," said wide-mouthed frog.
And Butterfly quickly flew away. So wide-mouthed frog jumped and skipped and hopped some more, further and further into the undergrowth. And then he met Mouse. And he said,
"Oh, hello. I'm a wide-mouthed frog, and I eat little flies. What are you, and what do you eat?" "Well," said Mouse, "I'm a mouse."
And Mouse also knew that Frog might eat her tiny babies if they were small enough to fit in wide-mouthed Frog's mouth. And so she hid her babies behind her. She said,
"I am Mouse, and I eat berries and nuts."
And then she scurried down into her home very quickly to stay out of wide-mouthed Frog's way. Well, wide-mouthed Frog, he hopped and he skipped and he jumped some more, further and further into the undergrowth, until he came across Snake. And he saw Snake, and he looked very interesting. Snake, it had beautiful golden eyes, mesmerizingly beautiful. And he said,
"I'm a wide-mouthed frog, and I eat little flies. What are you, and what do you eat?"
"Well," said Snake, "I am Snake, and I eat wide-mouthed frogs." Said wide-mouthed frog, and made his mouth as small and narrow as he could. He tried to get rid of all the wideness, and then he said,
"Oh, you don't see many of those about. Do you? I like that story. That's one of my favorites.
And the wide-mouthed frogs have carried on playing their tricks ever since, which is why they played a trick on Tippity Twig in Tippity Twig and the Pond Monster. So I'm going to introduce you to Myrtle Mary. And we're just going to learn a little song from the story of Myrtle Merryweather, or Myrtle Mary. Sometimes I call her Myrtle Mary and sometimes I call her Myrtle Merryweather, depending on the poem.
So,
this is Myrtle Mary. From the story, Myrtle Mary and the Crumbling Wall.
and if you want to, we can learn the song together. So I'll sing the first bit and you can sing the second bit. Is that okay? Everybody? Yes? My name is Myrtle Mary.
My name is Myrtle Mary.
Shall we do this or shall we do something else?
You see, I'm so indecisive.
Well, I think we should do this. All right. My name is Myrtle Mary and I've travelled far and wide. I've lived in forest, field and glen.
I've lived in forest, field and glen.
I've forgotten it. Hold on a minute. My name is Myrtle Mary. My name is Myrtle Mary and I've travelled far and wide, through town and city, village green and met man, woman, child. I live in forest, field and glen, by seashore and lakeside. I listen to the wild things in the places that they hide. So we could sing it together now, couldn't we? So I'll sing the first line and then you can sing it after me. My name is Myrtle Mary.
My name
is Myrtle Mary.
And I've travelled far and wild.
I've travelled far and wide.
Through town and city, village green.
Through town and city, village green.
And met man, woman, child. And met man, woman, child. I live in forest, field and glen.
I live in forest, field and glen.
By seashore and lakeside.
By seashore and lakeside.
I listen to the wild things in the places that they hide.
I listen to the wild things in the places that they hide.
I've spoken with the butterflies.
I've spoken with the butterflies.
Who look me in the eyes.
Who look me in the eyes.
You might not believe me, but
you might not believe me, but
a child won't be surprised.
A child would be surprised.
They see you when you see them.
They see you when they see them.
They see you when you see them.
They see you when you see them.
As important just like you. As important just like you.
As important just like you.
Not just a thing that flits about.
Not just a thing that flits about.
A floating in the blue.
A floating in the blue.
My name is Myrtle Mary and
my name is Myrtle Mary and
I hug the trees each day.
I hug the trees each day.
Connected with their wisdom.
Connected with their wisdom.
I feel them deeply pray.
I feel them deeply pray.
That in this time the people find.
That in this time the people find.
The path back to the way.
The perfect to the way.
The path back to the way. The path back to the way. The path back to the way. The path back to the way.
Perfect to the way.
Well, that was a little bit mash up. But that's okay. You know, I hope that you've all enjoyed the poems and the stories and the songs. Tippity Twig and I have got a lot more stories to tell. This is our first time in doing this in about 12 years or longer. So yes, I'm looking forward to doing more, and I'm going to be at Glastonbury Festival in June. And I will be much more familiar with all of my material again, because I think, as you know, children, you know, when you're trying to remember a story, sometimes it gets all muddled up in your head. It does, even for people who are supposed to be grown-ups, you know, because at the end of the day, all of us are children, and we're all new in the world in comparison to some things that have been here for hundreds of years. So I'd love to tell you some more stories another time, like Rapunzel and that kind of thing, which I've rewritten, and Rumpelstiltskin, which I've also done in a different way. And thank you so much, John Rowe, for helping me to relaunch Tippity Twig. And also, I'd like to thank someone from the Mind Cloud, who I've started to learn the conical rhythms. And normally I would be doing drumming and instruments in my shows, but I tried to keep it as simple as possible to begin my first show. But yes, I will be doing more of that, which will mean my drumming is going to get better and better and better.
Okay,
Yeah.
Carolyn, that was lovely, gorgeous.
Thank
but there
you.
is one there. We have one person I always have to ask if we're going to let people back. Louis, are we going to let Carolyn back?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you,
Louis.
Thank you.
What did you say, Timmy? Did Timmy
Thank
say
you.
Thank you, Louis, for listening. I'm so honored to meet you, because I've heard all about you from John Rowe. And yeah, so I'm absolutely delighted to actually meet you now. And yes.
Right.
I will.
So what's coming up? What's coming up? What is coming up is on Sunday at 6 o'clock UK time, British summer time. We have our worldwide story round. Everyone is invited to come and tell a story on that. It's hosted by Mike Russ from Get a Word in Edgeways. Then Tuesdays, every Tuesday, worldwide story round happens every other Sunday, but every Tuesday we have our young international tellers, where we have, and I saw Jasname on here earlier. She's one of our young tellers from Punjab, but we have storytellers from all over the world, and anyone who wants to, any young teller, young is anyone under the age of 25. So we have people from sort of primary school age up to people in their early 20s come onto that from countries all around the world. So everyone's invited to that, to come and tell a story or just come and listen to a story. It's every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And then next Friday, from Northern Ireland, from County Antrim, I think, we have the amazing Colin Irwin. So for now, can we all give, and there's someone entering the room, just a little, just in time for Carolyn to say goodnight to them.
Yeah, that was Timmy. Timmy was there, and then that's her mum.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there you go. Hello. Yeah, I recognize you from another square earlier in the evening. Right. So for now, thank you, Carolyn. We'll all give Carolyn one more mute and unmute rather, and give Carolyn a big round of applause.
Woo!
How do we need to do?
And of course,
Thank you.
and of course, Tippity Twig and Merryweather and Myrtle Merryweather. But for now, thank you, and thank you, Waleed, for flying the magic carpet for us one more time. Thank you. Right, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Right.
Bye, Carolyn.
Bye.
Bye. Was that fun? Yeah?
Oh. Oh, that was a disaster. That was a disaster. All right. On the stream. Oh God. Hello. Hi, that was terrible, wasn't it?